Could be the testing's, frankly, overrated. Maybe it is overrated. But whatever they start yelling, we want more, we want more. You know, they always say, we want more, because they don't want to give you credit. Then we do more, and they say, we want more. But we have the greatest testing in the world. And don't forget, we have more cases than anybody in the world. But why? Because we do more testing. When you test, you have a case. When you test, you find something is wrong with people. If we didn't do any testing, we would have very few cases. They don't want to write that. It's common sense.
No. Wow. We would have booked a doctor for this segment, but it is so frighteningly obvious that the president is uttering complete stupidity and is flying in the face of everything that this virus can do to this country. And when you have a test, yes, you have a case. And then you know about the case, Mr. President, and you're able to isolate the case and contact trace the case. And yes, when you test, you have a case. And it seems to me Donald Trump doesn't want to know about cases. Donald Trump doesn't want to know about cases in this country. Perhaps those numbers make him look bad for his presidential second-term ambitions. I don't know. Willie, how do you explain this?
I don't know how to explain it. I'm glad we didn't insult a doctor by bringing him or her on to try to explain this. The quote again, if we didn't do any testing, we would have very few cases. It's common sense. That's some Ron Burgundy stuff right there. Unbelievable.
Keep in mind, he was already impeached for abusing the power of his office. And at the time, this was House Impeachment Manager Adam Schiff's warning in his closing statements.
Now, you may be asking, how much damage can he really do in the next several months until the election? A lot. A lot of damage. And you know, you can't trust this president to do what's right for this country. You can trust he will do what's right for Donald Trump. He'll do it now. He's done it before. He'll do it for the next several months. He'll do it in the election if he's allowed to.
A lot of damage. He can do a lot of damage. Less than 5 months after Congressman Schiff said those words, it's getting worse right now in front of all of us. Just in the last 2 days, just take a second to tick through where we are right now. In the last 2 days, Trump's 2016 campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, you might remember, who was indicted and convicted and refused to cooperate with investigators against Trump, right? He got essentially a life sentence under his conviction. He was released from prison as a coronavirus mercy case, even though he has not met the requirement for that case, released by the Bureau of Prisons, which is part of the Department of Justice, which is run by William Barr. At the same time, Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, who committed a felony, he says, on the president's behalf and who testified against the president, Michael Cohen was supposed to be released from prison because of the coronavirus in early May. Again, run by the Bureau of Prisons under the Department of Justice under William Barr. That release was mysteriously delayed without explanation. At the same time, the Department of Justice is trying to drop the charges against the president's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, even though he literally pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. The president has urged the prosecution at jailing of both President Barack Obama and his current opponent, Joe Biden. Trump's current acting director of national intelligence, who's basically a professional Twitter troll, is leaking innocuous documents meant to foment a scandal around the last administration. Trump's allies in Congress are saying they're going to start hearings into the origins of the Russia investigation, while the president hectors Lindsey Graham to call Barack Obama. Trump's undermining the rule of law in just the last few weeks is the kind of thing you see in other countries, Russia or Turkey and China, something that we're seeing here. And here's the key part of it. Trump never really has to order for any of this to be done. I mean, I don't know. We don't know one way or the other whether he told William Barr to spring Paul Manafort or not. But he doesn't have to. People around him just do it for him. Another example, just today, the post office announced that it is opening a review. Interesting. A review of its contract with a bunch of private companies it contracts with, including Amazon, among others, which the president has been publicly lobbying for explicitly because the President of the United States does not like the First Amendment protected coverage that is done by the Washington Post, which is owned by Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos. And Trump wants to screw Jeff Bezos and screw the Washington Post. And he wants to use the post office to do it. And Trump installed his lackey to run things over there. And guess what? Look, they now made an announcement. They're going to review the contracts. But we know Trump is vindictive. I mean, he's loudly vindictive. We know Trump himself said the jury is still out on Wray. That's a message sent. We also know somehow a law enforcement official leaked this warrant within 24 hours. That's where we find ourselves now. This is the unsteady state we are in as the pandemic ravages our country and our economy. Over 85,000 dead, 36 million unemployed. The worst crisis for the nation in generations. A president who cannot do the job and has as much chance of fixing the problem as if you shoved me in the nuclear reactor control room in Chernobyl on the night of the accident. And a president who is now determined to do whatever it takes to save himself from his own failures. What he said about testing, which is sort of why he doesn't love testing, why testing in some ways is bad because it makes it look bad. Take a listen.
So we have the best testing in the world. It could be the testing's frankly overrated. Maybe it is overrated. Don't forget, we have more cases than anybody in the world. But why? Because we do more testing. When you test, you have a case. When you test, you find something is wrong with people. If we didn't do any testing, we would have very few cases.
What is your reaction to that? I want to bring in David Plouffe, campaign manager for President Barack Obama's 2008 campaign, who tweeted earlier today, quote, our current president is calling for his predecessor and his current challenger to be jailed in America. The only story out of his sideshow BS is this. The entire enterprise is on the line. It is not clever political tactics. It is unprecedented and sick. Expand on that, David. That has stuck with me, what you said there. What do you mean?
Well, I think we get numb to his circus act. But, you know, we've never had a president. Nixon didn't do this. No president's done this, where he's suggesting, not subtly, not that they just be investigated, that they be jailed in the middle of a pandemic where we're headed to over 100,000 deaths and probably a Great Depression. So the scale of this, the irresponsibility, the narcissism, it's dangerous. To the extent there's an electoral strategy here, Chris, my sense is both in the public polling, but I'm sure in their private polling, they're starting to see some hemorrhaging with people who voted for Trump. So he figures I'll go back to, you know, my trusted distraction, deep state attacks, and I'll get some of those people back. The politics of this more broadly, though, cannot be more stupid. Okay, so people are worried about dying. They're worried about the job they've lost. They're worried about the economy. And he wants to pick a fight with a popular ex-president on BS and nothing. So it is curious to me, but it could not be more dangerous. And I hope that's what the story is. People not covering Michael Flynn or Obamagate. It's he is threatening to jail his current challenger and a former president, bizarrely.
I mean, what is unnerving to me here is that the president was impeached for what ended up ultimately being an unsuccessful attempt to outsource an attempt to get a criminal investigation going and announced against his likely opponent, right? Clearly, he thinks this is a key part of winning. There was the FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton. He's just going to try to run the same playbook. He was impeached for that. He was not removed from office. Now he's got William Barr of the Department of Justice. He is saying out loud, like, prosecute the thing he was impeached for, like cutting out the middleman. He's gonna insource the job, bring it back, and let an American do that job. William Barr, like, go please prosecute my political enemies.
Yeah, well, he's got no range. He's got one move, and this is it. And it's what he goes back to. So we had lock her up back in 2016. We'll have lock him up or lock them up this year. And again, I just think, in the middle of a historic pandemic, really the only question voters have is, who can we trust over the next 4 or 5 years to dig us out of it? And I think I think he's bored, quite frankly. I think he's tired of this. He wants to move along from the pandemic. I think it is. And he knows he messed it up. He's paying a price for that in polls, but he's bored and he wants to move on.
I think he's bored, and I also think what I said in the intro is true, which is that, like, if you put me in the control room in the nuclear reactor at Chernobyl the night of the accident and told me, like, fix it, like, I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. I just don't. I can't. He does not have the ability. At the deepest level, he doesn't have the ability to do the job, to do the thing necessary here. And so if you don't have the ability to do the job, like, there's not much for him to do other than this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of at the point now where it's like, can we just make it till Election Day on January 20th? Can we hold on? Because I think he's going to test that. I think it's been laid bare he's not up to the job. There's no question about that. But you look historically, I mean, this is, we had Roosevelt, obviously, with the Depression and World War II. You had Lincoln during the Civil War. You had Wilson during World War I. I wouldn't put 2008 and 2009 in that category, but Barack Obama had to deal with a serious economic crisis. So we have one of our most, top 4 or 5 historical challenges. And we've got this guy who's not only up to the job, he clearly doesn't want to do it, but he's shredding every norm that we have. And listen, this is a little dramatic, but you only have to be an amateur student of history to understand that ways of government and empires don't last forever. We're getting tested in a way. Today, really, for me, was a breaking point, which is saying something given everything we've been through. But I assume it's only going to get worse from here.
Well, part of, and I think your point here is well taken. I tend to agree with you. The tuning out, which I think part of the tuning out is adaptive for all of us. Like, we don't all have to run after the soccer ball when he kicks it somewhere. But there also is the case that because of the scale of the cataclysm, the human suffering, the toll in human lives, and economic ruin that we're over, it all seems more trivial, but it also, in a disturbing way, feels like it's giving him latitude. Like, we're all focused on this rightly, and he's kind of raising the temperature on what his henchmen are doing.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, he's sending the clearest smoke signals. They're not even smoke signals. They're direct orders, even if he doesn't say them. And I think all hell is going to continue to break loose. There's no question about that. And I'm sure he's got a list of things. What's interesting about Trump, in my view, it's hard to kind of get in his sick and addled brain, but I think he's convinced himself the pandemic was not his fault, the response to it. I think he's convinced himself, that Barack Obama was spineless campaign. And so that's what's so now everyone else should know better, but Republican senators, Attorney General Barr, everyone's just saluting. And that's what's very scary.
Nope. Yeah, no, I think he feels very sorry for himself. The pandemic happened, and it sort of happened to him. And he's sort of resentful of it for happening to him.
Hi, kids. It's Mom and Dad. Just want you to know that we're doing really good with the isolation and the coronavirus, and we're not fighting. We're getting along. I'm cooking. Daddy's eating.
Look at that.
Get the fuck off me. All right, kids. Don't worry about us. Okay? We'll get through it. Bye.
life.